G'day, I'm Dean Jones, Regional Recovery Officer Western Victoria from the National Drought and Flood Agency. We're here in beautiful Echuca with a few cockatoos with some background noise, and I'm here to speak to Peter Tuohey, who's a local farmer and also the Rural Assistance Commissioner for the Victorian Government. So Peter, you've been through a few droughts. I know 82 was a drought. How have you found in the last few years, the last couple of years, dry conditions up your way?
Yeah, look, it's been getting tougher and tougher because the cost of farming is a lot dearer these days, and recovery time takes quite a number of years, because just for simple, just trying to cover the cost of your inputs, if you're a cropping farmer or a sheep farmer, it becomes very expensive. So if you put a lot of crop in, it can cost you probably, 400,000 or 500,000. So you don't get it back in that first year. It'll take 2 or 3 years. And we know now with people, particularly in Gippsland, they need to replace their livestock because they've sold off. Again, livestock prices are very high, and the current prices make it very prohibitive and a bit scary to buy into stock when they're so dear.
It doesn't sound like a simple thing, recovery, does it? It rains one year and everyone, maybe outside farming, might say, fantastic, everyone's on the way up, but there's a lot of emotional and economic recovery that's needed. How long do you think it might take for people to come out of drought and go into recovery?
Yeah, look, it's a hard one. Quite often a 1 year drought will take 2 to 3 years. And if we look at some of the farmers in, say, New South Wales that have been from 2 to 5 years, it'll certainly be much longer, but their circumstances are slightly different. It does take a while to catch up. Often when you come out of a drought, you'll have a really good season, good yields, good wool prices, good lamb prices, but usually because of those high production levels, prices come back a bit, so it's always a bit of a shock. So when it rains, it doesn't rain money. It doesn't build your bank balance up. Most farmers have had to borrow against equity during the drought to cover costs. So it always, as I said, it'll take 2 to 3 years.
Well, Peter, you've got a few hats. You're a farmer and the Rural Assistance Commissioner. You would have moved around and spoken to a lot of farmers over the time. Is there any government interventions, both state and federal government, that have really helped farmers out during these drought periods? Yeah,
look, there's quite a number of grants that have been very good, and it's more around recovery and preparing for the next drought. So things like the Drought Resilience Grant and the Emergency Water Infrastructure Grant. So those have helped farmers change their systems on their farm so they can manage their farming business better into the future. So the Resilience Grant, you can build things like sheep containment areas. So when it's dry, you can lock your sheep up, you can close handy to water, easier to feed them, they use less water, and there's less damage done to their farming properties from stock walking all over it. The Emergency Water Infrastructure Grant also ties in with that. That certainly helped a lot of farmers put pipes and tanks and troughs around their farm. So again, stock don't have to walk long distances. And we know in a drought, there's always a lack of water, so dams and creeks and channels and rivers are all very low. So we need to conserve our water and go down a best use practice. So that's been really great.
It also helps in some way, doesn't it? You can manage your stock if you've got more water points, etc. So you bounce back when you've got pasture systems, and those things are often a benefit. Yeah,
look, it's great for the long term because you could put that infrastructure and those watering points in. It's really good for long term. So the next time around, you put some infrastructure in which will help you prepare. So it might be your containment areas, it might be a new hay shed or some silos, but it's certainly the tanks and the troughs and the piping, which is there for the long term. So it's a good combination where state and Commonwealth Government have worked together.
Yeah. And fingers crossed that we do go into this recovery phase, and what you're talking about, that concept of trying to work for the next few years to have longer term programs and make sure that we can work with farmers for a number of years so they're really well positioned to manage it next time. It'll be really important.
Yeah, look, I think the management of most farms is constantly changing. Farmers are very aware of the environmental changes, and they're trying to do that. So assistance and support by government agencies is really important to help encourage them and just give them that extra bit of support, whether it be financially or through some advice.
Yeah, excellent. And I think a thing that's worked really well here in Victoria has been a joining between the programs between Victorian Government and Australian Government, and hopefully we can keep looking around and filling those gaps where appropriate.
Yeah, look, and when we look at, say, the Future Drought Fund, it's a really good initiative where it's going to help some really big picture ideas to develop, drought strategies into the future. So it might not provide something to the farmer right at this point, but 2 or 3 years down the track, that's where we'll get the benefit. So it's putting those funds where it's needed for long-term gains, basically.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Peter. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your wearing both hats as both the farmer and the commissioner and trying to help us out. And also I'd like to thank you for what you do to help market some of the Australian Government programs for drought and recovery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean.